In Colombia, 2 months before the presidential elections, candidates from different parties held their first debate on Tuesday, which was organized by the Externado University. The head of Russia's delegations for talks with Ukraine, Vladimir Medinsky, repeated written proposals of the Ukrainian side to ensure peace following talks between the two countries. On Tuesday, Ghana's parliament approved a new electronic transaction tax, which the government says will help raise $900 million in much-needed revenue. It was passed after the opposition minority walked out of the debate. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, from the TeleSUR studios in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with the news. Stay with us. And now we begin with the news. In Colombia, 2 months before the presidential elections, candidates held their first debate on Tuesday, organized by the Externado University. Candidates Ingrid Betancourt, Enrique Gómez, Luis Guillermo Murillo, Sergio Fajardo's vice presidential candidate, Gustavo Petro, Luis Perez, and John Milton Rodriguez attended the meeting. The debate focused on 3 main topics proposed by academics and university students: the youth agenda, the fight against drug trafficking and consumption, and policies regarding gender equality. During his speech, the candidate for the historic pact, Gustavo Petro, stated that the main task of his administration will be the protection of the Colombian family in all of its forms.
We protect and strengthen the Colombian family. The Colombian family has different forms, from the one-person family, from the single woman, of which there are 5,800,000 female families, mother heads of household, the heterosexual, the non-heterosexual. We undoubtedly protect the rights of people to be the way they want to be. That is freedom. We protect freedom.
And the presidential candidate for the Green Alliance, Ingrid Betancourt, highlighted the importance of working on the leveling of salaries and pensions.
It's very important to work on wage equality, because it is very good that we women are there, but wage equality, pension equality, that is something we are going to work, and we have concrete proposals.
Meanwhile, the candidate, Luis Perez, expressed his intention to eliminate compulsory military service and replace it with social environmental service.
It's the compulsory military service for a social service and an environmental service. And in this social and environmental service, I would include the figure of women. It seems that women have a great sensitivity in social and environmental issues and would bring a lot of contribution to the country, especially to the regions.
Now we move on to other topics. Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador informed that Navy officials involved in the case of the 43 Ayotzinapa magistrate students are being investigated. The president indicated in his regular morning conference that the Marines have already made statements to the Attorney General's office in response to the video that was presented in the report of the interdisciplinary group of independent experts, which shows that members of the Marine Corps manipulated evidence in a garbage dump where the 43 missing Normalista students were allegedly incinerated. The investigators of the interdisciplinary group stated that the authorities hid for years crucial information that could have helped to know the whereabouts of the 43 Normalista students.
All the information is being delivered. It has been delivered. The file has been opened like never before, and absolutely nothing is being hidden. The instruction was given to investigate the Navy chiefs who participated in that operation, and all those who participated have already testified before the prosecution.
In Brazil, the Puebla Group meets in Rio de Janeiro to discuss the development perspective of the Latin American region. During the 2-day event, democracy and equality in Latin America will be discussed, as well as future perspectives in the context of the challenges generated by the COVID-19 pandemic. Participants will also highlight the need to increase investment in education, health, science, and technology in order to improve the quality of life for the population. Former President of Brazil, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, will close the event in Rio de Janeiro. And gradually, the Venezuelan economy is getting back on track despite illegal sanctions from the United States and its allies. Retailers are the leaders in this new stage. The full story with our colleague Madeleine Garcia.
It is Petare, considered the largest neighborhood in Latin America, and right there it is also the smallest bakery.
The economy is improving, the blockade is still in place, and we are moving forward. We have been hit quite hard by the economic war of the economy. This blockade, we're doing what we can. However, we're moving forward.
It is only 24 square meters, but it is enough to develop the traditional businesses of the Herrera family as pastry chef.
Everything is getting back on track, thank God. The idea is for the country not to stop, for us to keep moving forward.
Now they will expand their business. On the upper side of the house, they are building the place to make the bread and pastries they make at home. Small businessmen have resisted the pandemic and the blockade imposed by the United States and its allies against Venezuela. They have contributed to achieving a slight growth of 4% in the private sector.
We're talking about the contribution made by different small actors, entrepreneurs, the development of the popular economies, the family economies that have created a network, and the development in this part of the recovery. I believe that what we're seeing right now is a tactical result of these joint process of a country that bets on the Venezuelan men and women to create a line of recovery for the economy and obviously for their quality of life.
Inland, even with these difficulties, the situation is improving slowly. A symptom is the reactivation of tourist sites on the national highways that connect one region with the other. Before, not a single car passed. Today, since January, there has been more movement.
We have to be patient. We have endured a lot, but we keep going step by step. We have had a rough time, but it is getting better now.
There was a crisis when there was nothing. It was horrible. Thank God we got something because there were no sales, but now at least there are. One shouts, when will it end? Because before there was nothing. They are part of a network of 60 local bakers who supply at least 6,000 families.
Madeleine Garcia, TeleSUR, Estado Miranda, Venezuela.
Thank you, Madeleine, for reporting this story, and we'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back to From the South. The head of Russia's delegation for talks with Ukraine repeated written proposals of the Ukrainian side to ensure peace following talks between the two countries. Vladimir Medinsky said Ukraine should proclaim itself a neutral state under international law guarantees in order to implement out-of-bloc nuclear-free status. The official said there is also an expectation for Ukraine to abandon joining military unions, deploying military bases, and also contingents or holding military drills on the territory of Ukraine, without an agreement of guarantor states, including the Russian Federation. He also said that Ukraine asked for the final decisions between the two countries to be formalized at a meeting of heads of states.
Ukraine abandons aspiration to get Crimea and Sebastopol back through military means and states it's possible only within diplomatic negotiations. It doesn't correspond to our stance, but Ukraine formulated its approach. They don't apply to the part of Ukraine which it calls districts of the Donetsk and Luhansk regions.
And Turkey's Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavusoglu announces that in the latest session of peace talks in Istanbul, Russia and Ukrainian delegations have reached a consensus on some issues. Turkish high officials held a meeting with the delegations of Russia and Ukraine after the peace talks in Istanbul on Tuesday. Speaking to the press after the meeting, Cavusoglu said that mentioned talks mark the biggest step in the rapprochement between the two parties, and Kyiv and Moscow have reached a consensus and common understanding on some issues. Hinting at a possible meeting between the foreign ministers of both countries in the near future, he also noted that Turkey expects a meeting between Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky with Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin.
The fact that our respected President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has opened the talks today is an indication of the value we attach to both countries and to the establishment of peace. Today, we are happy to observe that the rapprochement between the two parties has increased at every stage. You have just heard the statements of the delegations. A consensus and a common understanding have been reached on some issues. In the future, the foreign ministers of both countries are expected to hold a meeting to give final shape to the common understanding. Then the meeting of the presidents of both countries is on the agenda.
And the Ukraine's top negotiators said enough progress had been made in talks at Turkey to resolve the conflict with Russia to enable a meeting between the presidents of the two countries.
The documents we worked on today on the agreement on security guarantees of Ukraine are sufficient to announce and hold a meeting of presidents. The key to this, I emphasize again, is the ability to obtain security guarantees from the guarantor countries in order to end today's war.
On Tuesday, the leaders of the United States, Great Britain, France, Germany urged the West not to drop its guard against Russia. The United States President Joe Biden told reporters in Washington shortly after holding a phone call with the four key Western European allies that the four leaders agreed not to let up in strong economic sanctions imposed on Moscow over its special military operation of Ukraine, after Russia signaled it will scale down fighting around Kiev and Chernihiv. The executive declared that also they will continue to provide military assistance to Ukraine. And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back. On Tuesday, Ghana's parliament approved a new electronic transaction tax, which the government says will help raise $900 million in much-needed revenue. This, which has sparked widespread popular criticism, the so-called Il-Levi will introduce a 1.5% tax on electronic money transfers and transactions, which President Nana Akufo-Addo's government says will help address problems from unemployment to Ghana's high public debt load. This has sparked widespread popular criticism, and for many Ghanaians, the tax represents yet another burden, as they are already struggling with high living costs heightened by soaring fuel prices due to the Ukraine crisis. Lawmakers passed the law after the opposition minority walked off the debate. Before they walked out of the debate, opposition lawmakers dismissed the new tax as unfair. And the Democratic Republic of Congo accused Rwanda of backing rebels in the east of the country. The spokesperson for the military governor of North Kivu province in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, General Sylvain Ekenge, accused the Rwanda Defense Force, the RDF, to supporting the incursions and attacks of the March 23rd movement, M23, on positions on the army overnight Sunday morning. The attacks took place at the Shanzu and the Ruyoni in the Tsuru area. To support his accusations, Ekenge said 2 Rwandan soldiers were arrested during the attacks.
During these attacks, the armed forces of the Democratic Republic of Congo detained 2 Rwandan soldiers. They are wanted officers Abirimana Jean-Pierre, serial number AP227779, and Private Uwajenesa Modini John alias Uwaye.
And hundreds of workers marched with red flags for the labor unions, chanting anti-government slogans in the New Delhi, the capital of India, on Tuesday as part of a 2-day nationwide strike that began on Monday. Demonstrators said that the economic policies implemented by the administration of Prime Minister Narendra Modi are hurting workers and the country's vast and organized sector. About 1,000 labor unions have organized the strike, and they are demanding the government to provide universal social security coverage for workers who are subject to the perils of informality in their fields of focus, an increase of the minimum wage under a flagship employment guarantee program, and a new labor law that will give employers greater leeway in setting wages and working hours. The protesters are also pressuring the government to halt the plans to privatize some public sector banks and the sale of public assets.
The more expenses increase, the more the precarity increases for unorganized sector workers, but it also affects those who are in the organized sector. We're being overworked, we're being underpaid. Most importantly, we're being threatened. we can't complain about these basic issues anymore because there is a huge surplus of unemployed people who are like apparently, ready to fill our shoes. So, of course, this is a registration of dissent against not just the poor economic policies of this government, but also the very anti-worker, anti-people steps that they have taken.
The Modi government has only one point, that they want to hide their economic criminality under the grab of communalism in the name of religion. So, and we, the well-producing class, we want to expose the real face of Modi government on the question of bread, butter.
And the International Association for Human Rights and Social Development addressed the issue of genocide against the indigenous peoples by Western powers at the 49th Conference of the UN Human Rights Council. A group of international human rights experts reviewed the actions of Western countries in their invasions, genocides, and torture of indigenous peoples in Syria, Yemen, Palestine, Libya, and Afghanistan. The reporters called upon the international community to determine various measures against those powers and to hold them accountable for crimes of coercive actions. They referred to the illegal occupation of Palestine by Israel and Syria by the United States as crimes, while citing the same situation experienced by the Colombian people with forced displacements due to the presence of paramilitary groups. At the United Nations, the Commission on the Status of Women, CSW66, adopted agreed conclusions on achieving gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls in the context of climate change, environmental and disaster risk reduction policies and programs on March 25, 2022. In this regard, South African Ambassador Matthew Georgini, who is the chair of the Commission's 66th session, briefed reporters on March 29th on the agreed conclusion.
For the first time, the Commission on Status of Women has adopted agreed conclusion on gender equality and empowerment of all women and girls in the context of climate change and environmental and disaster risk reduction policies and programs. So that has not been done before. So there's been specific and actionable measures and steps that have been agreed to, really that will give member states, but not only member states, I think world leaders, a blueprint on promoting the issues of women and girls in the space of climate change.
The European Union condemned the ongoing situation between Israeli police forces and Palestinians in the occupied territories. The bloc called on authorities to act urgently to de-escalate the current tensions in Jerusalem. The statement also said that violent acts must be avoided and the status quo has to be respected without any reservations whatsoever. Palestine officials confirmed the repression by Israeli forces in the occupied territory reached record levels in recent months and led to increased tensions in the area, mainly affecting shepherds and farmers. According to different sources, nearly 500,000 Israelis live in illegal settlements in the West Bank, despite several United Nations Security Council resolutions calling for the evacuation of these sites. And now we address other topics. German Health Minister Karl Lauterbach estimates that the Omicron variant vaccine will not be available in the European Union before autumn. The delivery of Omicron-specific vaccines had been expected early this year. Pfizer CEO Albert Bourla had said in January that his company will have one available in March, while BioNTech founder Igor Sahin said last month he expected it to be available in April or May. The German health minister, Karl Lauterbach, on the other hand, said September will be a more realistic date, since the development of the vaccine will be delayed. The German officials said, however, that it is very important to not wait for the fourth vaccination until these new adapted vaccines arrive. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.